year ago, America fell in love with a singing janitor from Terre Haute.
Oh, Richard Goodall won, you might remember, America's Got Talent.
He mopped the same hallway for 23 years, and almost nobody outside a small town in Indiana knew his name. Then a phone camera caught him singing over a cafeteria table, and within a few years that same man was standing on a national stage holding a golden buzzer, a $1 million check, and a secret about his own family that he never saw coming. Now, at 56 years old, Richard Goodall has done something fans have been waiting on for months. He has finally walked away from the job that shaped him, and in doing so, he has confirmed the one thing so many people quietly suspected all along, that singing was never a hobby he stumbled into by accident. It was who he was the entire time, waiting patiently behind a mop and a set of keys for the rest of the world to catch up. Richard Goodall grew up in Indianapolis before settling into a life in Terre Haute, Indiana, a town that would end up shaping nearly every part of his story. There was nothing flashy about his early years. He built a life around routine, family, and a job that most people walk past without a second thought. For more than 2 decades, Goodall worked as a custodian for the Vigo County School Corporation, spending his final and most memorable years at West Vigo Middle School. To the students who passed him in the hallway every morning, he was not just the man emptying trash cans or waxing floors. He was the guy who said hello to everyone, who hummed classic rock while wiping down lunch tables, and who somehow made an ordinary Tuesday feel a little warmer just by being there. Music had always lived quietly inside him, long before any camera ever pointed his way. He sang in church choirs growing up, joined friends for karaoke nights, and spent years performing with gospel groups around Terre Haute. None of it was about chasing fame. Singing was simply something he did because it made him feel like himself. People who heard him back then have said the same thing in different ways over the years. His voice sounded too big for the rooms he was singing in, like it belonged somewhere much larger than a church basement or a small stage in Indiana. In 2022, that quiet talent finally found an audience it never asked for. A student at the middle school filmed Goodall singing Journey's Don't Stop Believin' during a school event and posted the clip online without telling him first. The video spread fast. Within days, local news picked it up, and soon after, national outlets followed. Strangers who had never met him left comments calling his voice a gift. Television personality Howie Mandel came across the clip and said publicly that a voice like that deserved a much bigger stage than a middle school cafeteria. Through all of it, Goodall kept showing up to work in the same uniform, doing the same job, seemingly unaware of just how far that single video was about to carry him. What most people did not know at the time was that Goodall had already tried once before to get noticed. Years earlier, he auditioned for The Voice, hoping for any kind of opening. Nothing came of it. No callback, no second chance, just silence. He went back to his normal life without complaint, the way people do when a dream quietly slips away and they decide to keep living anyway. 2 years after the cafeteria video went viral, producers from America's Got Talent finally reached out. In May of 2024, Goodall boarded an airplane for the very first time in his life and flew to Los Angeles to audition. He had never traveled west of the Missouri River before that trip, so stepping into a studio filled with cameras, producers, and judges must have felt like landing on another planet entirely. His nerves showed the moment he walked onto the stage, but the second the music started, something in him settled. His performance of Don't Stop Believin' moved the entire room. Judge Heidi Klum pressed the golden buzzer, sending him straight through to the live shows without any further auditions required. Simon Cowell later called it one of his favorite audition moments in the show's history. From there, Goodall treated every performance less like a competition and more like a gift he had been given the chance to open. He dedicated How Am I Supposed to Live Without You to his partner during the quarterfinals, brought raw energy to Eye of the Tiger in the semifinals, and closed out the finale with a performance of Faithfully that left very few dry eyes in the building. When the season ended, Richard Goodall was named the winner of Season 19, becoming the oldest champion in the show's history at 55 years old. He was also the first singer to take the title in 5 years, breaking a streak of specialty acts that had dominated the competition since the last vocalist had won. It made for a perfect television ending. But the story behind that win, the parts that never made it into the highlight reel, ran a lot deeper than anything viewers saw on stage. Long before America ever heard his voice, Goodall had already lived through more than his share of quiet disappointment. After the rejection from The Voice, he found some comfort performing with a small gospel band, traveling and singing together in a routine that gave him purpose outside of work. Then the pandemic hit, and almost overnight, that entire chapter collapsed. Venues closed. Gatherings stopped. The band he had leaned on for years simply fell apart, taking with it one of the few places where his music had felt truly understood. Nothing prepared him for what came next. In 2021, Goodall lost his first wife, Patricia Sue, to kidney cancer. She had stood behind him through years of doubt and disappointment, and her death left him unmoored in a way that grief alone cannot fully explain. The daily routines they had built together disappeared overnight. The home they shared suddenly felt too quiet. Goodall kept showing up to work each morning simply because that discipline was part of who he was, even while privately learning how to navigate a life he barely recognized anymore. Those closest to him have said you could hear the weight in his voice whenever he sang in the years that followed. That sorrow never fully disappeared. Instead, it became part of the emotional depth that later moved millions of viewers who had no idea what he had actually been carrying. Even after everything he had lost, life eventually offered him something unexpected. In 2022, he met a woman named Angie, long before cameras or television contracts ever entered the picture. She knew him simply as Richard, not as a viral video or a future celebrity. Over time, Angie became the steady presence he leaned on through the entire whirlwind of his America's Got Talent run. She encouraged him during moments of doubt and reminded him that he deserved real happiness, not just fleeting attention. Just days before the season finale, the two quietly got married in California, choosing to keep the moment private rather than turning it into a television spectacle. Family and a few close friends from his AGT journey were there, and afterward the couple shared a quiet dinner together on the beach before heading back into the chaos of finale week. Goodall later credited Angie directly during his winning moment, saying her support was one of the biggest reasons he found the courage to keep pushing through every round of the competition. Success brought its own physical toll as well. Not long after his win, the demands of touring, interviews, and rehearsals led Goodall to undergo hernia surgery, a procedure he mostly kept out of the public eye while he quietly recovered. That recovery period forced him to slow down for the first time since his life had turned upside down, giving him rare quiet moments to sit with everything that had happened to him in such a short span of time. Angie did more than support Goodall emotionally. She also encouraged him to finally look into something he had carried quietly since childhood, the identity of his biological father. Goodall had been adopted as an infant and had grown up without any real answers about that part of his history. Using an ancestry service, along with the help of a friend who dug deep into the research, Goodall and Angie eventually tracked down a man named Hubert, a retired K-9 police officer and Army veteran living in the Indianapolis area. Remarkably, Hubert had no idea Goodall existed at all until the two of them finally connected. Their reunion revealed something else, too. Goodall discovered he had 3 siblings he had never known about, all sharing the same mother. By Goodall's own account, his biological father actually recognized him first, having seen his face on television during his America's Got Talent run and suspecting there might be a connection. When the two men finally spoke, Hubert reportedly asked whether Goodall was the same janitor from the singing competition, still stunned that after all those years without knowing he had a child, that very child turned out to be someone he had already watched on national television. Goodall shared the news publicly, introducing his biological father to fans and thanking Angie for encouraging him to search in the first place. He has said that without her push, he probably never would have gone looking at all, content to leave that chapter of his history unanswered. For years, Goodall had made peace with never knowing where half of his story came from. Meeting Hubert did not erase that earlier chapter of quiet acceptance, but it gave him something he had stopped expecting to ever find, a living connection to the other half of his own history. Goodall has described the moment as one of the most meaningful surprises of his life, one that gave him a sense of belonging he did not realize had been missing. Once the cameras stopped rolling after the finale, plenty of people assumed Goodall would leave his custodial job behind and dive straight into a full-time music career. That assumption turned out to be wrong, at least for a while. Goodall simply went back to work at West Vigo Middle School, continuing to clean classrooms and wax floors the same way he always had. When asked why, his answer stayed simple. He genuinely loved the students, the staff, and the structure that job had given his life for more than 2 decades. His hometown embraced him right back. He received a key to the city of Teyote, and the school held an emotional pep rally in his honor, filled with cheering students and tearful teachers thanking him for representing their community with so much humility. Local news treated the celebration less like a routine school event and more like a hometown parade for one of their own. That same community had shown up for him well before he ever won anything. When the show first required him to travel to Los Angeles, it was not a corporation or a sponsor that covered the cost. Friends, neighbors, and strangers who had seen his viral video pulled their own money together through local fundraisers just to help him get there in the first place. New opportunities kept arriving right alongside his normal routine. Goodall performed the national anthem at an Indiana Pacers game, opened a show for fellow AGT favorite Howie Mandel, and appeared at local holiday events like the Circle of Lights and the Riverside Festival of Lights, all while still clocking in most mornings for his regular job. Co-workers and students eventually stopped treating him any differently, something Goodall has described as a relief rather than a disappointment. Seeing him in the hallway every day made the fame feel less like a spotlight and more like a normal part of who he already was, which suited him just fine. Rather than rushing into a record deal, Goodall approached his music career slowly and carefully, staying connected to the community that had supported him long before any producer ever noticed his talent. In August of 2025, he released his debut single, Long Time Coming, recorded in Nashville with experienced producers. Announcing the release, he described feeling like the luckiest man alive and thanked fans for their patience while he figured out what direction his music would take. While building his solo career, he also joined a local group called Sugar Street, performing smaller shows that let him experiment away from the pressure of a national spotlight, a reminder of why he had loved singing long before any of this attention ever existed. That same August, Goodall returned to the America's Got Talent stage for the show's 20th anniversary special, opening the night with Eye of the Tiger. He later performed Long Time Coming alongside Journey guitarist Neil Schon during the season 20 finale, a full-circle moment tied directly back to the song that had started his entire journey. Watching his original audition clip again backstage that night reportedly hit him harder than he expected, a reminder of just how much had changed since that very first performance.